Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and today we're going to be taking a look at Genshin Impact because it's out now, and well, you know. Basically, if you don't know, there's this game called Genshin Impact, and ever since it was announced, people have been directly comparing it to Breath of the Wild. Do I have to say why? It's out now on PS4 and Android, so we've been having a look at it on PS4 to see whether, now that it's actually out and we can actually play it properly, is it really, as some people have called it in the past, a Breath of the Wild clone? If that's the answer to the question you want, no, but with an asterisk. Obviously. I do want to make it absolutely clear that this is not a review. We are not reviewing the game currently. I mean, for one thing, it's not out on Nintendo platforms, but it will be. It's coming to Switch. But this is not a review. I'm going to say it again. This is not a review. A review, for one thing, should not focus entirely on comparing it to another game. But that's clearly a topic of interest, so we're covering it. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. Right, so I actually agonized over this for a while, and I felt that the fairest way to talk about this is to just give you a rundown of some of the game's features. In the game, you have a big, cel-shaded open world to explore, and to do that, you can just walk, or you can sprint, swim, free climb, and use a glider to soar through the air, all of which drain your stamina meter. In an older trailer, they even showed lighting grass on fire, and using the updraft it created to gain crazy height using the glider, and although grass is still absolutely flammable in the version we played, this mechanic doesn't seem to be present. There's no updraft. It just catches on fire. As you explore the world, you're going to be coming across camps of enemies who are going to attack you on sight. Defeating all the enemies in an area often rewards you with a chest containing weapons and other goodies. These enemies consist largely of bipedal, semi-human-like creatures called hilichurls with, as the game describes it, limited mental capacity. They often use wooden shields and clubs which you can burn with fire attacks if you wish to disarm them. And if you happen to be too far away from them to get a good whack on you, and they don't happen to be armed with bows, they can dig out small stones out of the ground to inflict you with some hit stun and potentially break your rhythm as you try to kill their chums. There are also larger hilichurls called metachurls that are brutish, more difficult, and use more distinct tactics in order to try and take you down. Other enemies include small jelly-like creatures called slimes, and these can harbor various magic elements and come in both large and small variants. Mitachurls can also rip these slimes out of the ground and throw them at you, causing their friend-come projectile to damage you and itself. There are also abyss mages, which are strange cloaked creatures with indistinct faces that cast magic at you from a distance using their wands. After all that battling, you may well be low on health, and so at any point you can find a cooking pot to rustle up some of the many ingredients you'll find throughout the world, such as fruit from trees, vegetables from the ground, or you can hunt wild animals for their meat in the form of just standard red meat and poultry. There are various recipes you can use to create meals which have significantly better healing effects than just the raw ingredients, although you can just eat those as well if you're in a pinch. These ingredients and other items can also be found in wooden crates that can be broken with an attack or burnt with fire. You'll also come across mysterious stone doorways that open up to small enclosed ruins, and these task you with completing various challenges and reaching the end. Thematically, these seem to be left over from a previous ancient civilization with technology so advanced that no one from the current period can properly understand or harness it, so these ruins remain largely untouched, except for the inexplicable presence of random hilichurls or slimes. Occasionally, these ruins are guarded by large mechanical enemies designed to keep intruders away, with their main weakness being their single glowing eye. Yeah, we think it's safe to say that whilst none of these mechanics is necessarily a 100% unique idea that has never been seen before it was in The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, having all these ideas and elements in one place is definitely eyebrow-raising. There is more to this game that certainly differentiates it from Nintendo's offering, such as the combat being far closer to something like Hyrule Warriors than the free-form and experimental physics fun of Breath of the Wild. The story, the RPG elements, the more restrictive nature of the world, and literal level walling, the fact that it's online, the ability to switch characters on the fly even if it does completely and utterly destroy the narrative, it's certainly not a direct copy of everything that makes Breath of the Wild what it is, but perhaps saying it used Zelda merely as an inspiration it's slightly underselling things. What's even more interesting is that many of the game's differences from Breath of the Wild feel, well, some of them feel really highly polished, but the more Zelda-like elements that are ripped from Breath of the Wild just don't seem to have the same level of care. Crates, for example, can be burned with fire, but not all crates. Even if they can be destroyed with other means, sometimes they just don't burn. The animations for climbing and gliding feel oddly stiff and basic compared to what you can see in combat and all the acrobatic nonsense going on there. There's also no inertia from updraft, so when cancelling your glide, it's just kind of you're either going up or going forward or you're not, and you just drop like a stone. The ruins that you fight through feel largely samely and often copy-pasted from one another, at least, you know, individual elements. And then when you get to the end, you just get to like this big, well, it's not even that big, but this empty room with nothing but like this sort of, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a power stone or something. You destroy it in a couple of hits, but it's just in its own room. And it feels like the room should have had something more in it. From now on, we're getting into pure speculation. I want to make that absolutely clear. This is just a gut feeling I have. It is speculation. It's not based on direct evidence. But I have to say, it kind of feels like the Zelda elements of the game, or the Zelda-inspired elements of the game, I should say, feel like they were introduced much later in development, like they had another game on the go and they polished it up and they had some, you know, interesting ideas and they got the RPG mechanics down and the combat and everything. And then maybe Breath of the Wild came out and they were like, we could include some of that, but obviously Breath of the Wild is an extremely complex game and took bloody ages to complete. And as a result, it's got that sort of Breath of the Wild feel about it and a lot of ideas, but without them being fully fleshed out. Like the chemistry engine doesn't really seem fully fleshed out. As I said with the crates, sometimes they just don't burn and, you know, flaming attacks still work in the rain. It just... Again, I really want to specify that that is purely speculative, but in my time playing the game, that's generally the feeling I was left with. I don't want to talk too much about the rest of the game because this is not a review, I'm going to say it again, but overall, I don't think the game is without merit. I do think it has some interesting ideas, and the execution, I mean, it's a gacha-based game, so that's obviously going to lose some points from me, but even so, I think overall, I wouldn't say it's a bad game, but I did find it really quite tedious and dull. It's entirely possible that it's just not my kind of thing, and yeah, I put my hands up. I think overall it probably isn't. Even though I'm a huge fan of Breath of the Wild, this isn't a direct clone. It feels like, in some ways it feels like a photocopy of Breath of the Wild and not a high quality one, and then they've done their own stuff around it, or it's been photocopied onto another document. I don't know, that's a crap analogy. Also, the writing is atrocious. Like, really atrocious. One of the character flip-flops in, like, the first hour you meet him, becomes a completely different character. It's awful. And Paimon can die, I hate her. I hate Paimon so much it gives me energy. So, is Genshin Impact a clone of Breath of the Wild? Well, you should have been paying attention earlier, because we quite clearly said no. However, there is clearly some DNA being ripped from Nintendo's efforts here, and you kind of have to sort of wonder, where do you draw the line between inspiration and plagiarism? That's something we can't answer. That's something only you can answer with your hard-spending money. But why not do it for free, even though the game is free, but, you know, microtransactions and all that? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you copy nearly all of the letters of that subscribe button, but not all of them, and throw some of your own fresh ideas in, and be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo-related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.